I've decided to keep a journal.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Paul Schrader, where we watch every film written and or directed by American filmmaker Paul Schrader and explore how they speak to their moment in this one. The show's hosted by two guys, and one of the guys, my name is Jake Tropila. Real quick, Ian, are you drinking out of Chip from Beauty and the Beast? What is that cup? Hold up that mug.
You want to see this mug right here?
This motherfucker is drinking out of Chip from Beauty and the Beast. He has enslaved him.
I turned him back into a mug. Actually, it's consensual. He was also tired of being a man.
Oh, right. Again, it's like an otherkin situation. Do you know about this?
Yeah.
Okay. He's got just sort of like a rococo
Guatemalan
looking.
mug.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's got a floweriness to it.
It does. It has flowers on it. Is that what you mean?
Color scheme. Yeah, that's what that means, right?
Sometimes.
Hey, what's your name? Are you one of the guys?
I'm one of the guys. I'm the odd man out here. My name is Ian.
Well, don't give it away.
Okay, fine.
It's a
Nobody
surprise.
who listens to our podcast can read. I forgot about that.
Hey.
One day.
And that's what you said, and not me. I didn't say that. How you doing, man? Attacked you.
Good,
you
man.
right off the bat.
Yeah. Got a double attack. I'm doing fine. I'm back at home. Nice to be here.
Yeah, you
Nice
were
to
in
be
the United
settled in.
States.
Yeah, I was in the Imperial Corps.
You were.
Now I'm free.
I tried to force lightning you down the big hole in the Imperial Corps.
My father killed you.
Yeah. Wait. What? Hold on. That's not what happens. I do have a George Lucas tidbit about the film we're talking about that I'll bring up in a second. But
weird. Okay.
First of all, real quick, if you like the show and you would like to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon, where for $5 every month, every U.S. month, you'll get a bonus episode every other week covering Clint Eastwood movies from Before Play Misty For Me, all kinds of Clint ephemera. It helps us keep this feed free and going, so please consider supporting us at patreon.com/podcasty4me. Sorry about everything we do. Ian, I had a question for you before we bring our guest in. You know what? Let's bring our guest in.
Okay.
And then I'll ask you the question, and he can weigh in on it. Now, we got a situation on our hands, and to explain that, I'll introduce the guest, and I'll explain our situation. Now, our guest today is a film critic and editor, and he has the same name as one of the hosts of this show, Jake Tropila. Welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, Jake.
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much for being here. We received a voice message from Harvey Keitel and Jack Nicholson about what's happening here. Let me just play this for you now.
He's a Jake and I'm a Jake.
Yeah, how about that? Two Jakes.
So
You know the famous last line of that movie?
I don't actually. I haven't seen it. Are you going to spoiler alert us?
So forget it, two Jakes. It's two Chinatowns.
That's so silly.
Damn.
Yeah.
No, this is great because initially I had a little moment where I said, of course our guest is smarter than us and he's seen more films. But actually, in fact, he's very much on our level, on our bad level.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a fan of the show. I've listened to several episodes.
Thank you so much.
I love this film we're going to discuss. Let's get it on.
Let's get it on. First.
Yes.
Now, Ian and I, between us, have 7 cats. This has been discussed on the show before.
That's right.
We're one of the most catful podcasts. I learned something about Jake. Not only does he have the same name as me, but he has... How many cats do you have, Jake?
I have 7 cats.
Oh,
Isn't
no,
that
he's
fucking insane? First of all, this is a 14-cat pod. We've got a...
Yeah.
We've got a... what is that? A Patissier's dozen?
That's right, yeah.
You got a...
Wow.
Can you name them?
I can.
I would hope so.
Serenity, Zin, River, Inara, Morrissey, Malcolm, Orion.
Wow. And Zin is named after those chewing tobacco packets. Do you know about these?
I think he's... no. I think he's named... He's my wife's cat before we met, so I think she named him after an author.
Oh, Howard? Howard's in from Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. But and on top of that, we also have 3 dogs mixed in with our 2-year-old toddler. So it's a crazy household I got here, but they get along.
You got a menagerie.
You do.
I do.
Nice. Well,
yeah,
Roman menagerie.
what?
Yeah.
What did you call him?
Roman menagerie.
A Roman
He's going to
menagerie.
be on the show next week.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to ask Ian one question, which is, when you were in the United States, did you see and this is sort of relevant to the ending of this film, did you notice at the drugstore how all of the products are in prison?
Yes, it's insane now. It's insane. That's a place that you cannot go because it's impossible to shop for anything. And it makes me realize I don't actually need any. I'm not sure if I even need medicine.
Yeah, are they trying to make
drugstore.
us... Like, are they trying to destroy is this an inside job to end capital with the deodorant is behind bars?
Yeah. I don't know. Is this everywhere? Should we explain maybe to our eight
for international
non-American listeners?
Well, across these United States, especially at least where I have been here in Los Angeles, they're locking up all of the goods at your Target, at your CVS, at your Walgreens. And
they've synchronized this, of course, with a huge disinformation campaign about how retail theft is causing them to close their stores. And these stories get published in every major newspaper, and then they get recanted like 3 months later after an investigation, but that gets printed in one extremely niche newspaper.
Because it turns out that like they're closing the stores because
they're switching to an Amazon model.
Yeah, they don't want to pay people. But you go into the Target, you go into the CVS, and you want to get body wash or something, and they've turned the whole store into the razor blade section, except now it's stuff that you can't use to slit your wrists too. It's
all behind these weird plastic cases that you have to ask somebody to get out.
And they ask you which thing you want. They don't even open it for you, like you're gonna shoplift right in front of them. It's insane.
Even sometimes more humiliating. You have to push that button to call someone, and then it pages the store, and then you gotta wait there.
And the worst part is, they don't even make the button easy to find. You're walking up and down the aisle looking for the goddamned button.
Yeah, blends
Dwayne
in there
Reed,
well.
come on the show. We'll beat your ass. Is he still alive? Was that a guy?
I'm not sure if it was a guy. Maybe.
Dwayne the Reed Johnson. Is that anything? Probably not.
Maybe when he was an educator.
Maybe when he becomes the president.
Sorry, I'm just looking for... There we go. I found it. Okay. Anyway, that was kind of a 2-question, but just for Ian. Let's get into our signature segment, the 2 questions. This is where wait.
Hold on. I'm now realizing I had kind of a pickpocket ending with some deodorant that I bought while I was there. I did have to buy deodorant,
and you touched it.
I was forced to touch it, and we had a moment of grace, and now we have improved each other's lives.
I mean, Ian interacting with deodorant does sound like a kind of transformational experience for him.
Yeah.
Really alley-oop to me there.
I really did.
Speed Stick is Ava Green's aunt? That's just a joke about how the actress from Pickpocket is... Okay.
Yeah,
what kind of deodorant are you using? This is a call and an audible here. Ian, what kind of a deodorant you got?
Wow. Getting into 2 questions.
I'm inquisitive today.
Yeah.
I'm using a classic man's deodorant, and I don't mean that in the actual essentializing way. I just mean it's marketed to men. I'm talking about an Old Spice Pure Sport. I'm engaging in pure sport over here. Everything I do is for laughs. And it's quite nice. I've probably been using it for 15 years.
Wow.
What about yourselves?
Jake, I'll let you go first.
With my deodorant or my question?
Your deodorant, and then we'll do the questions in a second. This is going great. I like this energy.
No, I'm also an Old Spice user.
Wow.
I have been, I think, pretty much since I saw those Bruce Campbell commercials, and I've been sold on it since.
Oh, yeah.
It's just such a great classic smell. I use the Swagger. It's
I've
very
noticed.
nice.
Been noticing on the pod here, you've been using it.
Damn. Yeah. This is such a natural YouTube commercial. It's a great classic smell.
It's a great classic smell, man. It's why if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
I was turned off by the Old Spice commercials, specifically the epic random branding.
Sure. And unicorn, rainbow.
So I used to use like a Speed Stick or something, and now I'm on an Arm & Hammer. Like no, it says it doesn't have stuff in it that other ones do, and that stuff's bad, but mine's good or whatever. It's probably all the same shit. Yep. But anyway, I really support Army, and I want him to keep getting that
have more money,
that family money. So that's why I'm buying the juniper berry scented Arm and Hammer.
Little gin boy.
Great show so far. All right, let's get into the two questions. This is our signature segment where we ask each other two questions. Jake, were you able to come up with a question for us today?
I did. I wanted to keep it light, and I know things have already gotten off to a pretty silly start. But honestly, my question was, what is your favorite joke?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite joke?
One. I do.
Anything?
I do have a favorite joke.
Yeah.
All right. This joke is also like it's sort of a barometer for me, or like a litmus test as to whether I'm going to get along with somebody. So honestly, I've just heightened the tension dramatically, but we'll find out.
The stakes are so high.
Let's hear it.
I'm telling the full joke. Guy gets a job interview with a very rich man. He shows up at the man's house, and it's this palatial mansion, enormous castle of a house. And he walks in the door, and the entryway is lined with like Picassos and like Da Vinci's, like crazy, just the most elaborate artwork you've ever seen, and like suits of armor and like samurai swords, this giant gemstones, like all kinds of fancy stuff. And at the end of the hallway, he gets to this desk, and sitting behind the desk is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen, just like a gobsmackingly beautiful woman. And she says, "Oh, he's waiting for you. He just go right in." And he walks in to the guy's office. Again, just like artwork all over the place, beautiful fixtures and fine wood paneling, enormous marble desk. Guy sitting behind the desk is wearing like the fanciest suit you've ever seen, and he has a giant round orange head. And the guy, he's being professional. He doesn't say anything about it. He sits down, does the job interview, goes fine. At the end, the man says, "Do you have any questions for me?" And the interviewee says, I got to ask you, what's up with the giant round orange head?" And the man says, "Well, I thought you might ask about that. You see, many years ago, I was in this Moroccan market, and I found a lamp, and I rubbed the lamp, and a genie came out, and he said, 'I'll grant you 3 wishes.' And the first wish, I wished for unending riches, and that's how I got all these fine things. And the second wish, I asked for the love of a beautiful woman, and that's how I met my wife out there, my receptionist. And then the third wish, and I think this is where I went wrong, I wished for a giant round orange head."
Now, I've probably heard you tell this joke 10 times, but I do enjoy more and more the degree to which you commit to just front loading.
You gotta just draw it out.
You gotta
really enjoy that joke. It's a great joke. I love that joke. Anyway, that's my favorite joke.
It's a great joke.
Thank you so much. And you're allowed to continue with the episode now. Ian, what's your favorite joke?
That's a tough one. I'm not like a big street joke guy, so I can't recall anything off the top of my head, to be honest. I can tell
the audience about a joke that you made once that was very funny to me.
Okay, sure.
We were at the drugstore. We were at the CVS, and there was a end cap display that said "Stop smoking AIDS," and you turned to me and you said, "I didn't even know people did that."
Yeah, I did.
It's really funny to me.
Really that's very nice to tell.
Sure,
the best joke that you think I've ever.
Yeah, and that was, and just to be clear, that was at least 10 years ago, and no sign of topping it.
Yep.
What about you, Jake? What's your favorite joke?
Attempts since then.
Mine's is similarly. This is like a litmus test. If you can appreciate this, you can be my friend. It's just simply, what did Batman say to Robin before they got in the car? Get in the car.
So so silly.
About 8 years ago, when my sister graduated college, our whole family went out to dinner. We were all sitting in this nice big round table section. And I told that joke, and my stepfather, who had not made a noise the whole hour we were there, when he heard that punchline, he clattered his silverware into his plate and said, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" like, and that has made it like worth it for me. That's like so. I've never been more proud to get that kind of reaction.
Catatonia. That's wonderful.
It's like as you just quietly there hoping to hear maybe a good punchline of a joke, and then just gets hit with that, and
that's wonderful.
It was beautiful.
That's wonderful.
You can't write that.
Probably is what he said though, too.
Yeah,
like if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Jake. Ian, do you have a question for us?
I do not have a question prepared. Do you have a question prepared?
Yeah, I do. This is related to the film. What's your sleep situation? You back man, you side man, you stomach man.
Okay.
And what did Backman say to Robin when they got in the car? Okay. I'm sorry. I think I'm a backman now. In my 30s. I used to be a stomach guy with my head to the side, and but I find I just kind of get in literally and just lie like a mummy all night. I barely move. My wife thinks it's weird, but that's plain and simple. I can just get in and just ramrod horizontal and have a good night's sleep. That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Wish I could say the same. Ian, what about you?
Well, I think we can all relate to your wife thinking the way you sleep is weird. The way you do anything is weird. I think that's one of life's great pleasures.
And that's one of wife's great observations is, hey, why are you doing it like that?
True.
Yeah. I didn't sleep well last night. I was trying to prepare for the show, and so that's why I'm a little bit loopy, just to be clear.
Sure. Okay. I have not evolved to Jake's level yet, so I'm still sleeping on my stomach most of the time. If I sleep on my back, I will also probably snore, and my girlfriend will get mad at me and push me to make me flip over, which is good. She should do that.
Yeah, she should. It's weird that she comes into the separate room where you have to sleep by yourself just to push you over. Hard to sleep on your stomach in the hay as well, I would imagine. I'm a flailer in my sleep. I'm a very active sleeper, and so it doesn't really matter how I start. I'm gonna end up on my stomach, often diagonally, or sometimes with my. I woke up once and my girlfriend showed me a picture of me, and I had turned my head like a shepherd's crook and just slept like that all night for some reason.
Wow.
Yeah, like a cat, except that they seem to enjoy this sensation, and I
to be at peace sometimes in life. Yeah. That's true.
But I can fall asleep in many a position, but I'll end up face down in the muck. So that's me. Great 2 questions. We also have another segment we have to check in on. This is of course Paul the News. It's fit to Clint. Which is where we check in with what's going on lately with Paul Schrader and Clint Eastwood, the 2 subjects of our fair show. We'll start with Clint. Nothing. No news.
As far as we know.
Checking my Google alerts. Basically nothing coming out. Some MSN blog has been covering his cars. We're talking about the different cars he has. But not...
Does he have a lot of cars?
I mean, he's got at least 2.
Okay.
And there's the one like old white Mercedes that he filled up at the gas station in that paparazzi photo.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a picture of him with a Ferrari from the 70s, which is maybe the Ferrari that he got paid in to do one of the
Where Eagles Dare.
Yeah. So that's not news. Those are both old cars. Nope. But then with Schrader, folks may have seen this. Recently,
they likely did not. Why would they?
I tweeted it. That's why.
Well, that's true.
Recently,
I guess these specific folks.
White nationalist and also YouTuber PewDiePie. Is that how you say it? It's like Cutie Pie, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
Okay. He posted a video entitled working out like Mishima for 7 days or something, which is let me see if I can get it right here. Did I send it to you? I think I did.
You did. Yep, you did.
Anyway, yeah, he thanks to Jeremy Allison for pointing this out. I don't know how he saw it. I'm not going to look into it. But PewDiePie, known for his 4chan edgelord flirtations with Nazism that have either turned into or simply revealed a sincere appreciation for Nazi ideologies. He apparently is also a big fan of Yukio Mishima's work, especially
Unrelatedly.
Sun and Steel. And he said he's read this book like 10 years ago. So apparently the whole time he's been like shrieking the N-word during Minecraft, he was also thinking about Sun and Steel.
Yeah, this is, in case people don't remember, this is a book that I believe I referenced during the episode, which is like a late period nonfiction essay about how he decided to become so muscular.
The least defensible Mishima book to be a fan of. Because if it's one of the novels, you can say the man writes so beautifully. How did he turn into this demagogue? But this is the one where he's like, here's how I turned into a demagogue.
I mean, I quoted a bit. It's also fun to read, I will say. Sure. I'm not defending our friend PewDiePie, but it is, the whole thing is just like, what is a pen compared to muscles, basically? And that rocks. It rocks that people are discovering this and saying, I could model my life after this, or at the very least, somehow mine it for fairly popular content. The idea that this essay from 50 years ago.
First of all, he didn't mention the main Mishima thing. Like, that doesn't come up at all.
I think he said something like, he's kind of a controversial figure.
Yeah, he is. That is true.
Funny way to elide that. Yeah, no, that's right.
And it's mostly just like beefcake shots of him working out. And when he says he trains like Mishima, what he means is he moved to Japan a few years ago because he could. And he does some of this exercise outside. And other than that, there is no...
More like Mishima than the exercise that I do, but not that much
I suppose so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Ian, did you watch this video?
I did watch at least the first couple minutes of it. I wasn't going to stick around, but I watched it, if it helps, in my little DuckDuckGo preview thing that doesn't give any of my information to PewDiePie. That felt like a win against him.
I watched it on YouTube and then I deleted it from my history, but you probably did it better than I should have been in a private window or something. Jake, did you...
What about you, Jake? Do you ever think about training like Mishima for 7 days? Like the title of a Conor O'Malley video?
Got to be out in the sun. I even joked that I hoped it ended the same way, or ends the same way for PewDiePie. Yeah. But, how do you Venmo somebody a sword? I kind of tuned out after because halfway through that video, he has a built-in ad for the protein powder he's using, and he starts doing just like weightlifting with those little tubs.
Cool.
Which can't possibly weigh anything.
No, it's unserious.
I've got the ad right here, and he incorporates it. I think he's kidding, but first of all, he is Swedish, so it's hard to tell if he's kidding. Sure. And also, I love thinking about what Mishima would say about the following.
In Sun and Steel, we read of a secret energy formula that brought Mishima to a heightened state of physique and focused mind. Today we know, of course, that he was talking about G Fuel's caffeine-free hydration flavors.
I mean, that is a joke. He's making a joke.
Yeah,
for
it
sure,
is, but
he's got that. He has that same tone throughout the whole video. So I think everything else is completely earnest. And then
he reads some like passage that's just about whatever, the body and the mind are so essential, and to hone one is to hone the other. Then he goes,
yes, yep.
Those words are so comforting to me. What?
Well,
talking about, dude?
You know what? Thinking more about Jake's idea, I am into him trying to reclaim the divinity of King Gustav of Sweden, somebody nobody has ever cared about in their whole life.
Yeah.
Not been relevant to history in 300 years.
G-Fuel perhaps stands for Gustav Fuel when you think about it.
Yeah.
If only Marita had some caffeine-free hydration powder with him, maybe he would have had the energy to to cleave
Make a clean
Mishima's
cut.
head. So I hope Paul Schrader sees that video and posts about it on Facebook. So far, well, let's check. Actually, maybe he's done it since yesterday.
Sure.
It's facebook.com/paul.schrader.900. We all know the URL. Nope, he liked the bike riders. So
That's cool.
And he says there needs to be a comprehensive update of Andrew Sarris's American Cinema, which I don't think we're gonna get, Paul. So that's
Not yet.
That's Paul the News. It's fit to Clint. All right. How are you feeling? And you just,
I'm feeling
you
good.
did a big sigh.
I wasn't sighing at you. I was sighing at
PewDiePie.
it's just the fact that we try to have these conversations. We had a wonderful conversation with our friend Yui that I think explored a lot of the complexity of engaging with Mishima's work. And at the end, I still felt cautious about, did we capture enough of what it means to follow art that engages in topics that are difficult and maybe misleads people, and then to realize that millions of people are just watching this video. Maybe
millions.
A lot of
yeah.
Yeah.
I sent the video to Yui to see if they had any wisdom to impart, and their immediate response was, "Does he have a rock climbing wall in his house?" It seems like maybe he does.
It's a great question.
Hard-hitting questions.
Look, that'd be cool to have if you could swing it, I guess.
That's the type of thing that should only be a public good, in my opinion.
It's
There's
not
just
that
no
big.
reason to have it.
What if you have his is too big. You're
Doesn't
right.
have to be that
His
big.
should be a public good. But what if it's like a 6x8 piece of plywood with some stuff glued or nailed to it? Is that not?
All right. You mean like a backyard American Ninja Warrior practice obstacle course type setup?
Exactly. Although
That's okay. That's fine.
his would just be regular Ninja Warrior because he's in Japan.
That's true.
And he's Swedish.
Swedish Ninja Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He sure is.
Sounds like now it sounds like a fucking Old Spice commercial. Now I'm getting into a Swedish ninja. And what is there, a friggin' pirate as well? And a penguin? Anyway, let's get into talking about the film Light Sleeper. This is directed by Paul Schrader, written by Paul Schrader as well, released August 21st, 1992. Exciting moment, Ian, because we're talking about films for which we're both alive. Isn't that cool?
That's right.
It's pretty cool. Schrader skipped 1991, and he was out of the game until a little boy was born in what hospital were you born at?
I was born at Stanford.
Stanford Hospital. That makes a lot of sense now that I think about it, even for 1 second. And what's your social security number?
Yeah, it's what's crazy is my mother's maiden name. So let me just give you both at once here. You ready?
It'd be funny if your mother's maiden name was like 581.
Or just like the 9 numerical digits into a name.
Yeah. I mean, most numbers that you come up with probably are somebody's social security number, right? Like if you make up a fake social security number, are the odds in favor of it being real?
We discussed this, and then I've done further research and realized that actually up until like 2011, you could basically figure out you couldn't figure out a specific person's social security number, but they were the first 3 digits were like an area code thing, and then you could just sort of locate it. So not that anonymous.
Mine starts with 420. It doesn't. And I don't like that stuff. But we're talking about drugs today. We're talking about Light Sleeper.
We are.
Jake, you alluded to the fact that you love this film.
I do.
But first, before we get into all that, what's your relationship with Paul Schrader generally? Mm-hmm. And how did you first encounter The Light Sleeper?
I love Paul Schrader's films very much. Aside from being the preeminent Facebook poster of our time, I honestly, truly, all joking aside, he's made really some tremendous films. And a lot of them I still even haven't seen. I would like to revisit Mishima. It's been 10 years, I think, since I've seen that. But I love Blue Collar. I think that's his best. His most recent trilogy, First Reformed, The Card Counter, Master Gardener, I think those are all exemplary and have represented the best of those years that they were released. And then this film, I actually watched, Light Sleeper, I watched around the time First Reformed came out, and then that kind of solidified me as a Schrader guy. But yeah, I think he's just an excellent filmmaker. And some of his stuff that he's seen, I would like to revisit. Like I remember enjoying Autofocus, but I think I didn't really understand who Schrader was at the time. And I saw The Canyons in theaters in 2011,
Whoa,
and
wow.
I did not like it. I thought it was cheap and poorly made. But maybe I've changed a lot, so maybe I'll find something to like about it. But yeah, I think Schrader is an excellent filmmaker, and happy to be discussing one of my favorite films of his, if not the favorite.
That's making me anxious about how I fail to connect with the film quite as much
okay.
as I would like to.
It's okay. It's okay.
I did like it a lot more after the second watch. I think I was coming in with expectation.
Yeah, this was so surprising to me. I loved this. I had seen it many years ago, and I think I had kind of experience like you, Jake, with Autofocus, where I didn't really have a relationship with Paul Schrader, and I thought it was pretty good. And then on this watch, I felt totally locked in, unsurprisingly, to a lot of Schrader's concerns, and I thought it was terrific. So I was taken aback when you said that it didn't do much for you, Jake.
Well, first of all, we got to set some ground rules because we're running into some confusion here. Because the guest and I have the same name. So my suggestion is that you refer to the guest as Jake, and then for this episode,
that's my preference.
I will be Abraham Van Helsing. Is that okay with you?
That's
Can I call you Abe for short?
Yeah, gonna have to call you
AVH,
Abe.
Abe. Yeah. Halsey.
Okay.
That'd be kind of cool if he goes by Halsey. In like a cool update.
Extremely.
Yeah, I had never seen the film before. It's been stuck in my head. Like I had this film in my brain because when I used to listen to the Doug Loves Movies podcast, there was a year where every week for a year he would chain together the titles of films. Mm-hmm.
I remember that.
This was in there as it was something light sleep perfect murder. And so
you just heard it.
I just heard it a million times, and I knew of it as I knew the poster. The poster is evocative. I think the poster also gave me an idea of maybe a harder edged film than the one we actually get. But I had not seen it until this past week, and I was initially sort of perplexed and confused by it, especially the ending in comparison to the rest of the film. And then rewatching it last night, I feel like I locked into some more of its positive aspects. But I did promise a George Lucas connection, which is Schrader had to reach out to Lucas to get permission to use the title because of
lightsaber
from Star Wars. How they have the light sleepers and they fight well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Jake's left the room. All right. A little production context. So Schrader is he was trying to get this thing funded, and he identifies this moment as like a real transition. This film is very much a transition
independent
film.
cinema.
Well, it's his shift toward independent cinema, really, like from Hollywood to independent. He identifies this as a moment where
death of like art house pictures in the studio
he can
system.
No longer convince some guy at Columbia to greenlight a movie about people talking about ideas or whatever. And so he is trying to get funding for this, and he gets Defoe attached, and he can't quite get the funding, and then he gets Sarandon attached, and he still can't quite get the funding, and he ends up putting this sort of package together with is it Carolco?
Don't know.
You ever known how to say this, Jake? You seem like you would know how to say this.
Used to. I thought it was a Carolco or something. I think they went bankrupt after they did Cutthroat Island, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that
happens. That happens sometimes when you do Cutthroat
Island.
Everyone's
a company, yeah.
So he puts like a package together with like a video deal. This is it beginning. I think what is like consistently something Schrader has to do in his career now is convince a bunch of people to put up money to get his movies made from here on out. And he has some, but not enough money. And they had like a start date for Sarandon and Defoe, who are, big deals at this point. Defoe, of course, had been in Last Temptation of Christ. Sarandon the same year has Thelma and Louise, which is just got a big 92.
Yep.
And Schrader refers to this piece of advice he got from Francis Ford Coppola, who said, just start making the movie and people will believe you're going to make it and they'll finance it. So he starts putting up, he goes into pre-production with his own money. He says in like a interview piece on the Blu-ray that he says how much money he had in savings at the time. And he's like, I had $330,000 or whatever. And so he puts up his own money and starts the ball rolling.
I mean, it's nice to see an artist invest in their own work, and it was sort of surprising to hear our friend Schrader. I don't know. I learned a lot of this from the filmmaker interview with Scott Macaulay.
It's a good interview.
And he talks about the fact that he's like okay with union minimums. I think he calls them not that exorbitant.
Yeah, there's a union lockout going on in New York specifically, where the New York like craft workers union, not the band, the New York, like a union of production craftspeople in New York were striking because they didn't like the contract that they were offered, and so the studios had just like shut down all studio production in New York. And so he says he was able to get like all the top guys because there were no jobs going on in New York because this was a non-union shoot. And then eventually, tragically, the studios just wore the New York guys down and they accepted the shitty contract, which sucks.
And I think it's obviously relevant to consider because there's this one of the little like background features of the film is talking about a garbage strike in New York, which is of course a ever-present part. I think there was a garbage strike when I lived there. Now I live in Oaxaca. There's garbage strikes all the time.
There's a garbage strike in the background of Taxi Driver as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay, this I don't know if I knew. But yeah,
there it's sort of contributing to the kind of cesspool of depravity that is New York, and here its thematic relevance is sort of more muted, I think.
Yeah, but I think we get a character who responds to it with about as much disdain or like dismissal as Schrader probably responded to most union actions in his life, which is just sort of like, this is... First of all, I think in the film he says something like labor movement is a contradiction in terms,
right.
That I know what it's like to not make much money or not have a pension or whatever. The classic individualist's response to like, look, my life's been hard. I'm not asking for any kind of collective improvement or something.
I think it also it suits the sort of air of stagnation and of indecision. Like things are piling up without resolution or forward movement. Yeah, I liked it because the character to me is extremely flawed, so I don't feel the need for him to have like the correct opinion on things. But I think it does probably reflect some of what Schrader thinks as well. I watched one of those, I think it's like Wired does one of those like a YouTube series where they have their Twitter account becomes like, they call it tech support or something, but they have people ask questions of an expert in a field, or they maybe just they like search the term paleontology or whatever, and they have this expert answer somebody being like, dinosaurs was a vibe for real or whatever, and the guy will be like, actually, but there was one with the head of New York City sanitation, like the head of trash pickup in New York, that was fucking fascinating because it is an extraordinary like feat of logistics to get the trash,
of course,
into any sort of like livable situation in New York. And sanitation workers, I think it goes without saying, should be the highest paid people in the country, probably.
Yep.
And also, according to IMDb, trivia, probably uploaded by the same guy from the Wired video. It said that in actuality, the New York City sanitation was so efficient that during the shoot, they kept picking up and disposing of the fake trash that the crew was putting down. I guess it's real trash. Yeah. Unless they're going to reuse it, in which case then it's not trash.
This is a great question.
Let's take 20 minutes for this.
Maybe filled with something that didn't smell terrible, and it's just the filled bags.
Yeah.
But
paper. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have we ever had a trash strike in Los Angeles that you can recall, Jake? I don't think so. I mean, not in my lifetime, I don't think. Yeah. We should just, teach everybody a lesson, I think, about appreciating.
See what happens? Yeah.
The garbage man.
Yeah. Mostly in my experience, what it does is create a bunch of reactionaries from people that who now think that labor is a trick because they just want their trash picked up.
Right. Exactly. And it's if anyone stops picking up the trash, it's the fault of the people who get paid the least in this situation. Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of dive into the whole like labor and trash thing. I kind of see this film as Paul Schrader describes it as his midlife movie on that same interview, and he's kind of assessing himself, and that's also what John Latour is doing. It's a guy who's caught in the middle of all these crossroads of people who just want to change direction or they don't want to work. And Schrader, Mishima was such an extravagant film, and everything else he did after that was just comparatively smaller. And more independent. And then this with Light Sleeper, he's kind of like taking a step back and assessing the industry he's in, which is like what Latour is doing. And Sarandon is also putting an end to her drug business and wants to move on to a more legitimate line of work. And there's this guy who doesn't, but there's this guy who doesn't really know how to do anything else. And he's just left wondering, what am I going to do when this is all over? And that's just one of the things I find fascinating about it. But,
It is really a film about like the mechanics, the labor mechanics of being in the drug trade it's far from Scarface. It's like this guy's job.
Yeah, he's a cog in a wheel that provides pleasure to people who can afford it, which in turn provides pain to others. And it's like, how can I stop that? Got a cat here.
Yeah. To clarify a tiny bit, he is a drug dealer, but he almost exclusively deals to like Wall Street guys or
UN
like
peacemakers,
UN members, exactly. Or people who have enough money to make these transactions. They talk in the film about them overpaying for drugs because it's done. I mean, he drives around in like a private car and meets these people at nice restaurants and delivers drugs to them in a sort of respectful or high class while also clandestine way. And I think it's cool that the film, there's just like a couple moments where it crosses over with what we would recognize as like the drug trade in the sort of classic cinema sense. And I think
the white boy
it's
Rick
nice
sense.
that
talking about classic cinema.
Basically right.
Yeah.
Who could forget?
Yep.
Actually, you know what? If you could call Jake and me white boy Rick for the rest of the episode.
All right.
I would like that.
All right, Rick. So I think it does keep the focus on Latour, but not in an ignorant way. In some ways, to me, like a more aware way, because it's saying like, look, for somebody like him, the drug trade would only exist in terms of like when the police occasionally come to hassle him or when he has to interact with these people. Otherwise, it exists more as a job, like Jake is saying. It exists more as something that he's trying to transition away from than anything else.
We'll get to all this. I think maybe a brief synopsis is in order. Ian, if you'd like to do the honors.
Be happy to. Yeah. Basically, we have this guy, John Latour, played by William Dafoe, as you like to call him.
That's his real name, though. Willem is a stage name. It was his nickname and a stage name. His real name is William Dafoe.
But I also think it's fun that you call him that. I assume make people sick to their stomachs while listening. So the movie opens. He's driving around in the aforementioned car doing deliveries. We don't get much of a sense of his clientele besides the fact that he doesn't really connect with them, that his relationships with these people are transactional, even though we get kind of like a Pineapple Express mention of how people like to talk to their drug dealers.
Specifically David Spade.
Correct.
A
Talking about Anselm.
young David Spade as I think is theological
cokehead.
Theological
Yes.
cokehead. Thank you so much. That's his his credited character. Yeah.
And he works for, not unlike Nina Van Pallant in American Gigolo, Susan Sarandon, sort of like bossy but charming but elegant drug boss, basically, of this 3-person operation is the sense that I got of. I mean, this is like a small boutique high-end drug sale operation, and he goes back and hangs out with them, and they have sort of like, to me, like Metropolitan, Whit Stillman-y conversations about new age stuff and Thai food, and again, their world does not resemble this drug trade world. But in Latour, we have an unhappy man who goes to his apartment and writes journals. Of course, all the Schrader stuff. But what's interesting is that it seems like he's transitioning, as Jake mentioned, into a new stage of his life because this business is going to close down. And also he's been clean for a few years, so has already made some big changes. And then the other sort of key plot strain of the film is that he re-encounters his old flame and in Marianne, and played by Dana Delaney. And she's also clean. She's afraid to have contact with him because she doesn't want to get dragged back into drug use.
Right. She's afraid to associate with a former...
right. Former user.
They were married, but like a person from her addict past. Yeah.
So he discovers by a series of coincidental meetings that her mother is in the hospital and she's going to die, and he tries to rekindle to hit. For him, it feels like a genuinely new stage because they're both clean and he still loves her and feels like they can start fresh, and she's super cautious, seemingly not just about the drug stuff, but about what he represents, like about her life and what she doesn't want to return to, and the stability that maybe she's gained. Anyway, those things all go horribly because they have this, what I think is very intense and well portrayed encounter where they have sex one final time. He thinks it's the beginning of something. She wants it to be closure.
Ian rubbing his chin during the sex scene. Intense, very well portrayed.
I mean, genuinely, I basically did
as
do
he
that.
fastens the belt around his neck. Yeah.
And while they're having sex, her mother dies. So she's blames him. She's in shock. Meanwhile, there's been these incidents where the police are pursuing somebody for the death of a 19-year-old who had coke on her at the time. And there's also the aforementioned Victor Garber, UN peacekeeper, who's a great character.
Is he a peacekeeper? I thought he was just an incidentally Swiss guy that they know.
Oh, I thought he was a UN guy. Maybe I'm wrong.
I thought he was their connect. He's like,
he is definitely.
He's their connect, but I think he's just doing an accent unrelated to the fact that there's a UN conference. But I guess now that I never put those together, but that's possible.
You might be right. I might have made this connection myself. Yeah. But he's definitively a Swiss guy who is going to be the connect for the sale of this whole drug empire.
He's a Swiss guy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. His name is Thies Brugge.
I got another
short for
good joke that I like a lot, and this one is for the kids. Kids can enjoy this joke as well.
Okay. Oh, I'll tell my son.
What's the best thing about Switzerland?
What?
Hard to say, but the flag's a big plus.
Yeah,
great,
fun joke, and it works. You know what? It also works for Norway and Denmark.
That's true.
Sweden too, I think.
Can recycle it.
Yeah.
All right, so these threads sort of combine because as Marianne is reeling from the death of her mom, she returns to drug use, and Willem encounters her in Tiss's apartment. So again, as like a third coincidence. And after he sees her, like post binge, maybe post having had sex there, not entirely clear, he leaves. And she commits suicide. She jumps from the building.
She falls from the building.
Right. Yeah. And obviously this horrifies him and drags him further into like confusion about his life. he takes this opportunity to get himself out of trouble with the cops by reporting on Tiss, basically saying like who owned the apartment.
Yeah, he gives,
people were there.
Gives the cop like a little bit of info in exchange for getting off his back. Yeah.
Yes. And then he goes back to drug trade stuff, but he's distraught. He throws away the ring that Marianne had given him, et cetera, et cetera. And he talks to Susan Sarandon, and she says that Tiss has called and wants another meeting. So they go to see him. Obviously, Susan Sarandon is just interested in maintaining this contact so she can move on to facial creams, to cosmetics, the thing that she wants to do.
Like sort of new age tinged organic cosmetics.
Yes. But Latour knows that this is probably related to him having been a stool pigeon. And so he buys a gun and he goes with her reluctantly, and they show up, and there's some dudes with guns there, and quite beautifully, Anne tries to protect Latour, says like, we came together, we're going to leave together. But Tiss says, okay, you need to leave. And Latour says, you should also leave because something terrible is going to happen, basically. Yeah. And there's a shootout. Latour goes beast mode, I guess we would say, and he kills everybody. He goes taxi driver mode.
That is what we would say. We would say he goes beast mode. Yeah.
Yeah. And he collapses on the bed.
Taxi driver's style, kind of lays down, perhaps to die.
Unclear about his future, yes. Yeah. Then he is in prison all of a sudden, and Susan Sarandon's character is going to visit him. Seems like she has moved on, but is still invested in him and his life, which is what they were worried about. They were worried about, like, are we still going to have this relationship going forward? Are we still going to care about each other? Can we maintain a meaningful connection in this transactional world? And in fact, they finally express some sort of like sublimated romantic desire for each other, and say that, when they get out, they're going to have a romantic relationship. And Latour says he's finally looking forward to the future, and then they have their pickpocket ending.
They do. Beautifully put. Thank you, Ian. Did you mention the Mary Beth Hurt?
Oh, I didn't.
There's a recurring, a few times he goes to see this psychic played by Mary Beth Hurt. She's like distinctly a yuppie styled psychic.
Right. Like also high end. Yeah. And this is, of course, Schrader's wife, real life wife.
The first time they've worked together, but she'll be in a number of films of his going forward. He considered casting her in Comfort of Strangers in the Helen Mirren role, but then I think they decided that it would be weird or something, so they didn't do it. But she does have the haircut in this film that Helen Mirren has in that film, or perhaps
it's true,
vice versa. Yeah, I mean,
and she's like a hyper accurate, or at least to Latour's eyes, hyper accurate psychic. She keeps telling him, pretty insightful stuff about his life, as far as he can tell.
Yeah, this is a real American Gigolo signals the coming of the 80s, and this is a real end of the 80s, like what now, sort of end of history type of movie. Although I believe the end of history, the essay is published in like 94, I think, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So we're not quite there yet, but Schrader even invokes like this sort of political economic moment in that filmmaker magazine interview, I think. Like this is like Latour, America herself is wondering what's next.
Yes, I believe he says the American century is coming to close. The days when we could drive the world economic machine are over, and therefore a lot of other things are over. America is having to come back to earth in a number of areas, and there's a very anxious zeitgeist in this country.
Do you guys find that to be true?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I do. I actually thought this was fairly well observed, and it is like you basically have to have the 80s and the sort of attempt at being post 70s before you can really realize there is no pulling out of this, and so now you just have to create a real future, post despair future.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of a perfect vehicle for discussing the end of the 80s when you have a guy trying to get out of the high-end cocaine business. One of the things that I did really appreciate about the film, especially on the second viewing, was how humanely it treats these people that are in the drug trade, and also I've never been addicted to any substances myself, but I have some familiarity with like recovery programs and things like that, and one of the things that's often very frustrating about films that deal with addiction or the fallout of addiction is that they just have the protagonist relapse like as a dramatic crutch, which is one of the less interesting things that you can do with a protagonist in recovery, because it's like obvious and the less hard thing to deal with, honestly. Like one of the things that I appreciate about this is how like Latour's behavior once Marianne comes back into his life, and Dana Delaney was in briefly in Patty Hearst, we should mention. And of course, Willem Dafoe is the Christ. And he was in that movie. One of the things that's fascinating is the way he starts acting like an addict without ever like returning to cocaine. Yep. Like his thinking just gets. He shows up late for work after they have sex in the hotel.
He's like too excited about a new relationship. Right. Classic sort of addict behavior.
Yeah, they start making out in the hospital hallway, and there's someone on a gurney behind them that they don't notice. Like almost immediately, it's just getting in the way of their like social functioning.
Are you telling me that's not a good kiss, though? You're making fun of me for calling this intense. I thought that was
it's good. I was
terrific
just making
kiss.
fun of you. I'm just making fun of you intransitive. Just whatever you did, it's to be mocked. There's a moment after the afterglow of the sex where I don't know how they've done this, but the movie was shot by Ed Lachman, who's worked with Todd Haynes a couple of times, and
Wim Wenders.
The same year the year prior he shot Mississippi Masala, which is an incredible looking film. And he'll work with Schrader a few more times, but the ripples in the sheet on the bed are somehow, they look like they're glowing, like he's got gels coming from different directions or something, so there's almost like a fluorescent effect on the bed that is bizarre. Like it looks like a screensaver or something. It's really cool.
Well, yeah, the lovemaking sequence, that's kind of where that's like Ed Lachman's demo reel in this movie, I would say, because Schrader talks about how, I mean, and you've described what his ideal room is. His ideal lighting in a film is just white light. Like he just likes the light. And Lachman very much likes his gels. And you could call this is very obvious filmmaking. Like when they're making love, it's all lit red and bright.
Right. Yeah. This
they're in the throes of passion.
Color.
Yeah. And then it gets cooler as it fades away. But it's just a very stylishly shot sequence.
Yeah. It was reminiscent to me of we just talked about Comfort of Strangers, and there's a similar like blue-green sex scene type of thing.
I was thinking about that as well. Yeah.
And the whole thing's bizarre. There's like a giant painting of Vermeer's The Lace Maker behind them that then is the backdrop of their intense, like their first ever sober lovemaking, and they talk about how it feels like the first time because they're not high. Yeah. And then in the post-coital reflection, there's a literal like tiny reflection of it. Like he doesn't the painting he can't get rid of it. Now it's miniaturized. The passion is like shrinking.
He also, I mean, she tries to, it sounds like she's sort of talking to herself more than him, where she says this was wonderful, I'm glad it happened this way, but it can't happen again, and like I don't regret it, but this is the end of it. And he's I think trying to like calm herself down and think in a sort of more
like bounce around. She says, I wish it didn't happen, but I don't regret it.
But this sounds like recovery speak, like trying to will yourself to be okay with something that you did and not freak out. And I mean, this is like she is the Lauren Hutton coming into his life, or the Betsy or Iris in Taxi Driver, like the woman who comes into the man in a room's life and kind of inspires but also upends things for him. But speaking of which, Schrader identifies these three characters, the Travis Bickle and Julian Kay from American Gigolo and John Latour, as autobiographical, versions of himself. And he says that in the 70s, in Taxi Driver, the character is angry, and in American Gigolo he's arrogant, and in this one he's anxious. Like these are the prevailing emotions of these stages of his life, I suppose. Do you guys like drug movies? I'm not like, I don't seek them out, and they often feel very like, even when they're kind of being lurid and seem more transgressive, like a Scarface or something, there is often still that lingering like reefer madness kind of Hollywood puritanism that I feel like pervades drug movies. Not this one, to be clear to me, but I don't know. Are you? I feel like I avoid them.
Yeah, that's I myself not a drug user. Never have been, never will be. And I think there's
come on, don't close that door.
Nah, it's shut, man. Same with alcohol, but I like Scarface, but there's like a sameness to a lot of. It's all like rise and fall, and the first half's thrilling, and the second half is depressing, and it all inevitably ends the same. And I mean, maybe the question might be: do you like drug movies or do you like addiction movies? Because that can be more compelling, even if it's not involving a substance.
Right.
But I mean, I'm just looking at it like Requiem for a Dream. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I watched Blow at some point for research for the show.
I watched that for the first time this year.
Yeah, and I was charmed just remembering how there used to be like RC Cola Tarantino movies being cranked out just as like a cottage industry, and then they would play on basic cable in like extremely abridged form, and I kind of was sad for that particular type of cinema that we've lost. But yeah, they follow a very similar structure. I mean, I do find the drug trade, the history of the drug trade, compelling as a subject. But then even I haven't watched Narcos, but I've seen like American Made. I've seen films that are about sort of the Colombian drug situation, and like it's they all have kind of a very similar outlook, which is like, this is exciting and nasty, but ultimately it's bad, and it's good that it's over. Yeah, there's something very refreshing about the depiction here of this as an industry like any other. Like, Latour doesn't want to sell to the Eddie character who's like on a bender. Like, there are human beings. They're depicted as human beings doing this job, and not like depraved scumbags who will fuck over anybody to get to make a sale. And I think it's telling, and the film knows this, that they're white people selling to other white people. The film makes reference to this. I know Schrader was a cocaine user and seems to have, when he talks about it, it sounds like he tells the story like he realized it was time for him to stop doing cocaine, and so he did.
Sure.
He doesn't really talk about it as a struggle, but maybe it wasn't. But he mentioned also in an interview that I listened to that when he realized he wanted the dynamic to be between a male drug dealer and his female like distributor or whatever, he asked around to find a woman of roughly the age he was looking for who was a drug dealer in New York City, and found somebody and like asked if he could like talk to her about her experiences or whatever for a film. And so his contact got in touch with her, and then she called him and said, I didn't know who you were, but I spoke to my friend Bertolucci, and he said you were cool.
Wow. Right.
So, first of all, surprising that anyone would say Paul Schrader was cool. But I guess there really were these people, and it makes sense. Like, all of the famos who were doing cocaine in the 80s, they must have, it was a glamorous thing. Ian, you ever do cocaine down there in Oaxaca or anywhere else?
No, I've engaged with the old coca leaf on occasion.
Oh, yeah?
Sort of a tea. Do not like it. Give me a really bad headache. Made me feel weird. So
have we told the pretzel salt story on the show? Anytime you talk about a headache, I think about this.
Sure, that is one of the worst headaches I've ever had.
Will you tell guest Jake about the...
Yeah, very fast. This is a 10-second story. When I was in high school, a la Paul Schrader, I worked at my
high
church.
School?
Yeah.
I thought this was 8 years old. I thought of this as an elementary school story. Oh, wow.
Nope.
Okay. Well, that's early high school.
No. Yeah. So I would prep for Sunday school. I'll go on Saturday afternoons and prep for Sunday school Sunday morning. And that involved refilling pretzel containers and the like. And I would just... mainline pretzels the entire time I'm doing this, right? Because having like free access to something is something that 14-year-olds are excited about, and I liked pretzels. Sure. But what I really wanted was the salt. So eventually I decided that I could just eat like handfuls of salt.
From the bottom of the bag?
Correct, yes. When the pretzels ran out, I could just throw it all back. And it gave me one of the worst headaches I've ever had in my life to eat like 5 tablespoons of salt or whatever.
So you have experience with the self-destructive consumption of white powder.
Sure, that's right.
You're not totally divorced from this story.
And being surrounded by chances for grace that I pass on.
Right. Right.
I'm glad that story ended the way it did. I'm glad you didn't like try to snort that or anything.
Oh yeah.
Like, because I still do that. Like, get the bottom of the peanut jar or the pretzel bag. There's some, good salt in there. You lick your thumb, dab it in, have a taste.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
we all do it.
Rub it on your gums, It's the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Do you guys ever know anybody who snorted pixie sticks like in middle school?
Yeah.
No, I mean...
That terrified me. Even when people do, I think they snort baking soda or like there's in movies when people are snorting.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to snort anything. I'm not interested.
I think it still damages your septum.
Still not good for you.
I'm of the same mind. I don't want to ingest anything to get your movie made. Like, even if you watch Scarface, he's like taking, I think it's like dried milk powder or something. Like he's getting that really in there, and I'm like, ugh, God, that's not for me. Not the least bit.
Although in preparation for this episode, I revisited Bad Lieutenant because I was just looking for more sort of New York City depravity around the same time, and he's doing everything under the sun. And then I did notice that in one scene he has a can of Diet Coke in his hand, and I thought, that's me, baby.
Now that is something I can understand. Yeah,
Jake Lieutenant.
Yeah, I want to returning to your point. I want to distinguish this from something like a Bad Lieutenant, where even though it is portraying this unsettled and unhappy New York and this main character who is struggling with their own behavior, it's so distinct to me because this borders on like a Jonathan Demme film where every character we meet has their own story, and even if we don't get that much of it, they feel like complete human beings, and even if actually Latour is not that interested in them being a human being, we sort of get this sense that there's like a story beyond his story, or many stories beyond his story.
Yeah.
So
even like the Eddie character, like his apartment is just wrecked. Like he's got food in the, like he asks him if he wants to buy this like bent golden statue that's just sitting in the corner of his
you want to buy this?
Yeah. But it is one of those films that every scene is just teeming with some sort of life, and John is just kind of going through it.
Yeah.
But what I really love just about this movie, because I think Willem Dafoe, or Old William, is one of our finest actors. Like people, the old adage, you can watch somebody read the phone book. I mean, I can just watch him do stuff for 90 minutes. There's a film from 2011 called The Hunter. 80% of that movie is just him setting traps in the woods, and it's like one of the most compelling movies I've ever seen.
I've been meaning to check that film out, so actually that's a thank you for the endorsement.
Check it out. Yeah, it's cool. But yeah, no, him just going around New York, and then I don't know how we've gotten this far into the episode without even bringing up the music, which I think is the best thing about
the
movie.
music.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, while we've mentioned Eddie and music, I did want to point out this is the final film of Paul Jabara, who plays Eddie, who he was mostly not an actor. Although he was in a few things, including he played taxi driver in Legal Eagles. That's interesting. And he was in the film Thank God It's Friday, because he is he's a actually an Oscar winner because he wrote the song Last Dance for Donna Summer.
Whoa.
And he also, with Paul Schrader, wrote It's Raining Men. This guy was like, this guy's like a disco
Very
legend. And the music of the film is, it's really something. Schrader wanted to use 5 songs from the Bob Dylan album Empire Burlesque, which came out in 1985. And one of the main things that comes up when you look up Empire Burlesque is that Bob Dylan fans are divided on it. This is a very 80s Dylan album. Schrader directed a music video for the lead single from it, which is called, it's not called Total Eclipse of the Heart. It's called like Has Anybody Seen My Love or something like that. Okay. But he calls up Bob Dylan, and Dylan says, here are the 5 songs I want. And Dylan says, I will give you 5 songs, but not those 5 songs. And one of them is like a George Gershwin composition or something. He's just like being a fucking dickhead. He's being a Bob Dylan about it. And so Schrader reaches out to Michael Biehn, who had played the Apostle John in The Last Temptation of Christ.
The Last Temptation of Christ.
But was also a musician. He's in a band called The Call. He had also done some Christian music, interestingly, which I wonder if he and Schrader related on that. But he describes in the special features on the Blu-ray that he like gave Michael Biehn the 5 songs he wanted, and then Biehn like wrote something with the same theme as each of the songs he wanted.
Yeah.
And I think they're great. I like the songs, the soundtrack quite a bit.
Interesting. I'm mixed on it, but I also want to hear what Jake's gonna.
Please.
Oh, really? I mean, wow. I thought you'd be on board if you love the film. But yeah, and like it's like the first song in the film, "World on Fire," that's based on Bob Dylan's "Something's Burning." That's just kind of how Biehn retooled it. But just the way the film just drops you in with that opening crawl, and that the Michael Biehn's voice is just this deep, booming, and outstanding. I'm not a music critic, so I can't really describe it any better than that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful voice that Schrader returns to, and part of what I also like here is Schrader says that Latour has 3 voices throughout the film. He's got his own dialogue with other characters. He's got his inner dialogue with the journal, and then the quote unquote like poetic alter ego is in Michael Biehn's voice in the music. And so anytime he's traveling, that's the music just kind of expresses Latour's state of mind. But just the first time I saw it, like the whole opening sequence just kind of bowled me over, and I was ready to go with it everywhere. And I think the soundtrack is one of its greatest strengths, and that's why quite frankly I love it so much, because it's so good to just listen to.
It's got he also composed the rest of the music around it. Like it's very much a single piece by a single composer, and it feels it's cool, like in line with the Philip Glass Mishima score, like Bernard Herrmann's work with Taxi Driver. Like it feels like Schrader is very open to a strong musical collaborator, which is cool.
Yeah, he's talked about liking to like kind of counter program with his music, where he's happy, like a Philip Glass thing, where maybe it's distinct from what's happening on screen, but that allows both things to enrich each other.
Right.
And I agree with you, Jake, not Rick, but Jake, that the first scene, this is why I was sort of surprised that Rick was caught off guard by the tone of the film. I think this is one of the classic, like, for opening scene teaching you how to watch a movie type of openings, where everything about it, the pace, the music, the tendency to like trail these cobblestones, these objects through the rainy nights. Nothing about this to me suggests that this is going to be any kind of like gritty Taxi Driver style.
But you've got the journaling and the man in the empty room, the mostly empty room. Although in this case, he's got a bunch of CDs.
But the journaling is like also immediately coherent, slightly flawed. I mean, he writes like people with different colored whose eyes are different colors. He says WHO''S. So like there's a real person's journal, but it's not an insane person's journal. Right.
But I based on Taxi Driver and American Gigolo, I'm looking for a kind of seething rage in this guy, or some. I get the sense from. And maybe it's just where Schrader was in his life when he wrote this, but I don't ever really feel like Defoe or like Latour is dangerous, which is fine. Movie characters don't have to be dangerous. But like I think I was caught off guard because it seems like things are mostly going fine for this guy, except that his boss is looking to change careers. And I was just going into Paul Schrader's drug dealer movie. I was thrown off a little bit by that being the conflict in it.
Yeah, if I may, I think because you mentioned the parallels earlier with Travis and Julian, the rage makes more sense coming from a younger man. Latour is middle-aged man himself. When you get older, you kind of go into like this. There's an expression for it. It's like when you won't update like your machines at work.
Obsolescence.
Not obsolescence, but like corporate complacency, where basically you're finding the position you in. You're tired, and literally, but like he does not have the energy to try to change like what his circumstances. So he's just kind of going through the motions, dealing out to these high end people, and then once just all these things just come sweltering back into his life, it's like, okay, I need to fucking do something because there's just so much pain out there. But I think he's just I like it because he's just kind of a guy who's stuck in a situation, but he doesn't really have the passion to pry himself out until maybe the last moment. But that's what I would say to that about this being Schrader's drug, because I would like to see the angry film too, but I think this makes sense to me.
Oh no, I think this is better. And to your point, the fact that the thing he gets excited about is somebody from his past. It's not even a new relationship; it's a new version of an old relationship.
He wants to return to this with like clear eyes and see if he can make it work this time. But I think,
a chance to do it again, and also just demonstrating kind of a limited imagination about what's possible. It's just like the greatest thing I can imagine is a better version of something I've already done, which I did in a very bad way.
That's very end of history. That's very fin de cycle or whatever.
Yep.
Should we do a brief New Age corner?
Sure.
Because there's this New Agey thinking that is throughout the film. There's lots of reference to astrology. And I think, the Akasha Cosmetics brand seems to be inspired in some way by some New Age ideas. The logo is very Kathmandu, as the characters say. And Sarandon is also, she's always ordering takeout from Southeast and South Asian restaurants. There's like and I think she gets sushi at one point. There's a real like Eastern. She's participating in Eastern cultures like through a sort of consumer lens, which is ultimately sort of I think what a lot of New Age stuff comes down to. But doing a little bit of reading. A lot of these links were purple, and I wasn't sure why, but apparently I've looked into this before. But our old friend Theodore Adorno, you ever heard of this guy? You know this guy? You familiar with this guy? He wrote about astrology in the 70s and about how astrology easily aligns with far-right ideas. And we are about to get in trouble because white guys talking about astrology. But this is what a dead white guy talking about astrology in the 70s had to say, which was that it basically offers a kind of individualized or individual-focused knowledge or explanation for why things are the way they are, and suggests that you shouldn't change them or you can't change them because that's how it's fated to be. And so this is an inherently conservative position as Adorno sees it, because astrology simply offers you like explanations without any means of changing them yourself. I think I learned also that the newspaper horoscope was sort of inadvertently invented by a guy writing about the birth of Princess Margaret, I think. Okay. And like wrote her birth chart or something, and people were so excited about this that he started doing a column of weekly birthdays. Like here's what the stars are saying about people born this week, and then that got to be too much, so he chopped it down to basically there's 12 possible people you can be, and here's what's going to happen to each of them this week or whatever, or today. I mean, this is. I know that there, and as I've learned, there have been a number of attempts to create like leftist forms of astrology or incorporate astrology in these sort of less Western, but ultimately like still fairly Western forms of understanding the cosmos, like from a post-colonial or a liberatory perspective. None of which are that compelling to me, but again, I'm some white guy. But it does feel, it's especially in the, as put forward by the characters in this film, it's very individualized and it's very focused on like, what should I do? What are the forces of the universe sort of indicating that about me, about my life, about what I should do to improve my situation or to make the best decision that I can, rather than offering some kind of solution for the liberation of all people. And also, I think it's mean when people say that like Geminis are all deceitful or something, because you can't choose when your parents conceive you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
so everybody,
it is a classic discussion.
Everybody be nice to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
It will be. I won't be.
I'm not a Gemini. Also, I just think it's mean.
Okay.
It's me. Because what are they going to say about Virgos? You know? Who knows?
Sure.
Also, I'm the virgin. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I'm cool. Virginity is also cool if you want it to be, I guess.
I
but
think that's a good way to put it as
but
well.
I'm,
yeah.
you know, okay.
Jake is the classic cool virgin archetype. Yeah.
White boy Rick, you mean?
White boy Rick,
Right.
the world's first
No,
virgin
Yes,
Chad.
Jake is not. Jake is the classic cool, real cool archetype.
It's never made sense to me, because I'm on what's called the cusp, because depending on which publication you look at, I'm either a Gemini or a Cancer. And
that's also saying somebody is a Cancer. That's rude.
It's like, you know, I just feel left out, so I don't really care about it. But
sure.
Sorry, Ian, please continue.
You're laying back in the cusp.
Yeah, I'm laying back in the cusp.
Yeah, I mean, that idea of it being like a left to right pipeline, because you maybe seek out you recognize that there's inequalities or there's forces that are maybe limiting your ability to rise by class or by race or something, and you seek some form that didn't historically oppress you to understand the world.
Right, it's not your boss, it's Jupiter.
Right, but what you end up doing, like you're saying, is being hyper-individualistic or sort of sometimes enslaved to something that just a new hierarchy or a new fixed future for yourself. But I will say, I think the film actually does a decent job of doing a sort of both sides presentation, because in the psychic, I think we get somebody who basically, although she is given sort of like almost supernatural ability to read Latour, effectively what she is offering to him is just like an outlet. I mean, she's just doing therapy, she's doing
therapy,
like,
but saying a different kind of pseudoscientific bullshit back to him than some therapists might.
Right.
Yeah.
And in some ways, you know, being more challenging than some therapists can be, in the sense that she actually tells him, like, you need to do this. You need to, you know, not falling into the trap of just like reaffirming all of his behavior.
Right.
Being a good therapist, not a bad therapist, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I can see, I absolutely see the usefulness and what people can get out of, not that everything has to be useful, but I can see why people might enjoy and appreciate any kind of system for sort of plumbing your own unconscious, where whether it's dream analysis or tarot cards or whatever, if really what you're bringing to it is not any kind of secret knowledge within the cards, but it's like, if I say, hey, what do you think why do you think the Knight of Cups is here? And you say, oh, it's my dad or whatever. I don't know anything about tarot cards, but like clearly you've just yanked out of your subconscious that you're worried about your dad in some way, right? And like that's a mechanism through which to kind of figure your own shit out. It's when, in many cases, outdated and inaccurate understandings of constellations get involved that I find it very frustrating. And also, constellations aren't anything, because the stars are all so far away that that you see them together on a sort of a flat plane, but they could be, thousands of light years separated depth-wise.
If you yourself shifted, then their relationship to each other would
not
shift.
to blow the lid off of constellations, but like if we're on Neptune, all those motherfuckers are looking different because the stars are not related to each other. They don't know they're in the constellation. You know what I mean? I
think it's also that there's a great little essay in the Blu-ray too. If you don't have it, check it out. They talk about how he goes to see the psychic, and it's not necessarily a man who believes in God, but he's believing in maybe other outside forces and just is looking for some kind of cosmic or spiritual answers to something that is greatly out of his control. And that's probably also, what's the main tenet of astrology is by using the stars, it's arguably more tangible than something of using a god, but to pray to. But again, like you said, it's all perspective. It's different everywhere.
I mean, to get think PC about it, perhaps I think maybe the what feels like an increase in kind of mainstream acceptance or dalliance with these New Age ideas or this kind of a weird amalgamation of new spiritual beliefs and like some borrowed stuff from the Near and Far East in the 90s is that I think absent the great Satan of communism, global communism, what's our new aligning force? Like we now need some new understanding, some new reason to explain why things are happening. And the great historical science of Marxism is still too scary to many people, so they turn to other ideas, perhaps, and that's why we have the show Charmed, and that's why the central perk looks like that.
I think in the film you sort of mentioned that the fact that this like drug trade exists in the background, and there's mention of it being sold, and it's never discussed like where the actual drugs come from or something like this. It's only talked about in terms of like multinationals, which I think in the post-Soviet world are maybe now the great force that exists apart from like the American state, right? The force that maybe we have to reckon with somehow, which is...
This is explored perfectly and completely in the film Austin Powers.
It's exactly right.
The shift from...
Yeah, that's correct.
Extorting the United Nations to just building factories that make miniature models of factories.
Yep. But now because we as individuals, the way it affects our lives is just like, my job is ending. I don't have a pension plan. I have to seek out a new position, and maybe somebody like a Latour would never conceive of dismantling a system so great. So he only thinks about pieces in his life that he can move around basically and create meaning. And I think one of the other wonderful parts of the film is this man struggling to find happiness for himself and self-improvement and basically creating chaos where he goes. And the question sort of becomes like, in this philosophical realm of like the question of double effect or moral luck or something, like to what extent does your pursuit of happiness or your pursuit of what we would consider like praiseworthy goals, is that okay if it does cause this pain, right? I mean, effectively, without meaning to, he kills his ex-wife. You could argue that's one position. And I'm sort of curious what you guys think about, what is he supposed to feel about his journey? Because it's not just a straight up like, oh, the existential hero is looking for meaning in his life, because it's not like it's without consequences. So I wanted to, get an answer from you guys. What do you think is the takeaway for any of us who are trying to be better, to try to be happy, to try to find a future for ourselves?
Yeah, it's an eternal struggle. I have to say I've had a few rough patches of my own this last year, and sometimes the thought crosses my mind, maybe I would be better off just sitting in a prison cell and take some time myself, because there's a lot of
get more reading done.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's I do like that ending where he's finally at peace with himself, and he does not have to worry about all the changes that are happening to him. And there's a very poetic beauty in it. But yeah, it's sometimes life is just hard to endure, and when all is going away, like what else can you do? I mean,
Yeah.
White Boy Rick,
I
do you have any
mean,
thoughts?
look, if I knew the answer to this, I wouldn't be podcasting. But I think, you know, we find ourselves in a very frightening futureless moment, it feels like. I don't know if you guys have picked up on that at all, but it doesn't seem like you can just go ahead and do what your dad did or whatever and squirrel some. My boss was just telling us all the other day that he would be happy to provide any free investment advice if we're interested. And it's like, for when, dude? Like, what do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the only kind of like rock solid philosophical grounding I can ever find is like, well, try not to introduce more pain into the world because there's enough already. And I don't know necessarily if like dealing cocaine is that much worse than working at the bank or whatever in terms of a thing to do with
this comparison comes up. They make jokes up at the beginning about, I don't trust those Wall Street guys. They're all corrupt. And there's sort of like a very obvious irony about drug dealers, feeling that these people are bad. But I actually don't think it is irony because I think there is a strong argument for them doing more harm. But I think my question is, it's good to try to not harm people, but the struggle becomes what happens when you do harm people anyway, right? Which is often the case.
I mean, as Schrader says, he explains of the ending that the bit of change that he sees, he identifies in Latour is that he's looking forward to something. In this case, he's looking forward to having sex with Susan Sarandon, which really felt like it came out of left field. I felt like they did not have sexual chemistry in the film. Like she's sort of motherly to him or like big sisterly to him. And I could see them, I could easily see these two actors like cultivating sexual chemistry in the film if they chose to, but it feels like a deliberate, it feels like there's none generated. He has a lot of sexual chemistry with Jane Addams as the younger sister, which I was.
He does have a tremendous
honestly
amount of sexual chemistry with her.
None with baby Sam Rockwell. I feel like I could have hung around for that version of the movie.
He was also one of those characters who shows up and feels like rich. He's worried about
his name.
He's like
is
a lower
Jealous?
level drug dealer.
Why is his name Jealous? I want to know. Yeah, but I think looking forward and not returning to maybe harmful relationships or relationships in the past that were mutually deleterious, and instead trying to find new people to hopefully cultivate a more helpful relationship with, getting out of a bad situation. I think that's maybe like my moral answer to this. You did mention moral luck before, and I don't know what that is, and I was curious if you could explain that concept.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Moral luck, I think, comes from Nagel. I forget who coined the term, but it's an idea that sort of in this continuity of determinism and free will, we recognize that people have some, or most people recognize that day to day, people have some control over their actions, particularly when they're in a situation where they understand what's happening and they're making a deliberate choice. At the same time, they're controlled by circumstantial factors that they have no sense of and no ability to predict or change or exert influence over, right? But moral luck is trying to understand how we judge people who are in like very similar circumstances and make the same choice with different outcomes. I think the classic example is if you run a red light and you do it because you're late for work or whatever, and you know it's kind of a bad thing and nothing happens, we see that as maybe slightly more morally reprehensible, but not that big of a deal. If you run that same red light and you kill a child, you made the same choice based on the same information, right? There was no difference in terms of like what you decided to do, what the factors were beyond your control. The only thing that has changed is that now a child is dead. And are we able to hold that against somebody, right? In the court of law, of course, the crime for manslaughter of a child is extremely different than the crime of running a red light. Although effectively
the same decision.
They are based on the same decision-making process. Right? That's moral luck.
Yeah.
So on that a similar note, I did want to ask you guys about, because there's a kind of manhunt in the background of the film for a low-level drug dealer who might know, or mid-level drug dealer who might know something about this white Barnard student who dies with a bunch of cocaine on her. And of course, you know, there's implied in this the kind of dead white woman.
And there's like references to mandatory minimums and like differences between crack and cocaine laws.
I was thinking about how like this happened after the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman. Like whenever a famous person dies of a drug overdose, there's sometimes this like performative hunt for the dealer who gave it to them. Which is, we don't have time to get into how much drug laws are fucked and cause basically every problem with drugs except for when you overdose. But yeah, I mean, what's the fuck is going on with that? What's like, there seems to be this search for like someone whose fault it is. This is something we talk about on the show, but it seems like in this film of mostly, you know, doing the best they can, drug dealers who, you know, in one case, like he calls Eddie's brother because he's worried about this guy dying. There seems to be this equation of drug dealing with like deliberate murder, and I don't know, what's the deal with that? What do you have any thoughts on this, Ian or Jake?
Or Jake,
white boy Jake.
With I am white.
What?
Sorry. Yeah.
Whoa, the listeners.
Sorry. Let me turn my camera on. Okay, there we go.
Damn.
With that, because he's part of a broken system and he's dealing out drugs to these people, but Schrader talks about how this is a character who believes a lot in luck, and I think he is the supplier, but I think he's kind of leaving and hoping for the best and that these people won't abuse the substances that they receive. But obviously that's not true, and everything spirals out of control and goes horribly wrong. But yeah, just this the connection with the young woman, and you know, clearly I think it's just Teese, the gal who was with Teese Brugge, and his responsibility. But he's, you know, it's not something of a concern to him to that, you know, one woman who died. I mean, you know, multiple women die under his watch, and as a result of, you know, his dealings, and John Latour is responsible for all of that directly or indirectly. But you know, I think that also just goes back to like the guilt that he has, and maybe he's just trying to seek some sort of redemption, which he ultimately attains, you know, in the ensuing shootout. But you know, these are people trying to survive a broken system, and they all want to come out alive, but that may not be the case.
Yeah, it's funny that Schrader talks about how in order to get money for the movie, he had to put it in an action scene. And it's just funny to consider the shootout at the end with the heavy music over it and the slow-mo, to think of that as an action scene. But I guess it is if you're some guy who thinks of movies in terms of the video rights. Sorry. Anyway. No,
I was going to say to your point, Jake, that I think it's right to say that Teese is maybe the biggest moral foil, because in the first scene that we get him being in the hospital because this girl has OD'd. I think she barely survives or something. And Latour asks, like, is the girl okay? And T says, what girl? Like, he's at the hospital, and he's already forgotten who he's talking about. I think we're supposed to get the sense that, like, just at the very least, Latour, or at least this is the question, maybe, like, even though maybe he sold the drugs to Teese that this girl took and nearly died from, and she's underage and in these unhealthy sexual relationships, whatever, but he's worried about her. He still sees her as a human being, and this guy has no sense of people as humans.
The Teese character is really frightening, because it seems like he always seems like he's in control, and he's just maybe enjoys masterminding a sort of yuppie opium den or something. Like, there's always people around him, and he's like getting drugs for them, but he never seems to be, he doesn't seem like he's using, and if he is, he's like very in control. And this guy seems a lot scarier to me than Latour ever does, because like, what is his deal? What is this kind of like? They also call him, don't they call him homophobic at one point when he reads? He's played.
Yeah, well, he doesn't want to see the other dealer.
Right. He's played by Victor Garber, who is gay himself, and the character, maybe it's just Americans playing Swiss, often end up seeming like a sort of European gay man.
He's Canadian.
But, I was surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
A thought I had about it, looking back at this being Paul's midlife movie, I think just him being in the industry for many decades, I'm sure he's seen a lot of shit. And I think, whether or not Teesbrug is based on a real person, because there's a great moment where Sarandon and Defoe are in a restaurant and a guy just casually walks by and she points him out and says, see that guy? That's a Hollywood producer. He was nominated for Best Picture. And she says, I know every woman he slept with. So there's this ecosystem with just really big bad fish circling about. And I think, you peel back enough layers and you're going to find just a nightmarish world that ultimately you don't want to be a part of. Right. But I think that's just kind of Schrader saying, everything's not great on the surface, but it's even more insidious inside.
The bad people aren't actually the dealers as much as they're the power users.
Yes.
But also, that's like a real neoliberal world where most of the people doing the jobs think of themselves as like functionaries divorced from whatever ends up happening. Like they're not involved in the extraction of the oil from whatever countries where some child had to get their hand cut off or whatever to get it. They're also not involved in the end stage pollution. Yeah. But they're also not involved in the direct pollution of the environment. They sell the like logistics software to Exxon that allows them to distribute this stuff.
Enterprise solutions. Yeah, that's interesting. There's almost, I wonder if in a way this is like Schrader's like Roma style appreciation of these beautiful drug bureaucrats who have been left behind as the Mike Medavoys of the world get sober from cocaine, and these great people who brought us all the party drugs are they now have to shift toward cosmetics, not California almond oil.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. To return to the end, because I am curious. I felt something similar to the filmmaker interviewer Scott Macaulay, because he says that he didn't have a sense of the ending being as happy, and then Schrader says, "Oh yeah, everybody asked me if it was written later or it was tacked on or something." And he says, "No, this is intended from the beginning." I agree with you, Rick, that the sexual chemistry doesn't exist for me. This feels like a relationship, not a false relationship, but one that they've sort of like through the contrivances of fate ended up like, this is the thing that makes sense now, right? And they still care about each other and this is fine. Yeah. But it's interesting to me that Schrader does seem to talk about it as like a straight up pickpocket experience of grace, where I feel like the encounters that he has with Marianne, or even Marianne's sisters, are imbued with this intensity of feeling. He's forced to like figure out what he means to these people, what effect he has on their lives, and Anne just represents somebody who they care about each other, they look out for each other, and that's going to be like a fine future for them. And I don't think it's a totally vacant ending, right? It's not like a downer, but to me, it's maybe just a representation of the variety of romantic relationships that you can have in your life, or like the variety of meaningful relationships where, maybe you can have this multiplicity of intense high feeling or semi-brotherly / sexual feeling with this woman that you also know.
Now, who is the incest endorser on the podcast?
Still Schrader. Schrader's still the one.
I thought it was you now, but yeah, fair enough.
No.
Yeah, but maybe, it's like you said, there's a wide variety of loves out there, and it's maybe one more that's based in nurturing and not lust.
Yeah.
But that's a happy ending we all strive to attain, I guess.
I like when she wears all red. She does it a couple times.
Me too. She looks cool.
Yeah. There's one, the first time you see her, she's got red tights on. Even it's like she's doing. This is what I imagine. 42-year-old women who live in Manhattan. This is a certain type of Manhattan lady.
Yeah, this is also an Armani dressed film, and she eats imported raspberries at at a fancy restaurant.
Yeah, where she speaks French to the waiter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be cool to be able to do.
We should mention that Latour is French for the tour.
That's...
God, can you imagine?
Yeah,
we should
a shiver just went down my spine thinking about if we hadn't mentioned that. Yeah. She also mentions at one point a cop calling her for asking for nose candy, and she said John Candy.
Yeah.
Which that's when I bring the Skittles in there. But also several times in this film, both then and when Latour goes to get the gun, characters repeat their own jokes to somebody else.
I think that's great.
I related to this very much. But when he retells the joke in Spanish to his buddy, it's very funny.
Yeah.
Should mention also David Clennon, who plays Robert.
Old buddy of ours.
Old buddy of ours is in J. Edgar. He's in Flags of Our Fathers. He's in The Thing also. He's one of the guys from The Thing.
Mm-hmm. True.
And he plays...
Probably his most memorable.
He plays the titular Gone Girl in Gone Girl.
Yeah.
He's not, but he is in that film. He plays the Tyler Perry part. Let's see. We're coming up on the end here. Let me check my notes.
Great, just Schrader underrated as a filmmaker. It's the first conversation that Latour and Marianne have in the hospital cafe. They're separated by that pillar.
That's got to be a bigger table, right? I think they had like a trick table.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I liked that.
Yeah, but that's great. It's framed to look like a wall, and then like they break through that wall and are touching hands when he crosses the 180, which is an effective use of that.
And then at the end with Sarandon, there's just that little divide. Like you can reach over the little wall in the prison. Yeah. Although as we know, no touching.
And then but I mean, he breaks that rule. And then it's not a freeze frame; it's just super slow mo over the credits.
Yeah,
because you see his eyes fluttering.
I texted Rick that I thought this was the first film where Schrader does make an attempt at some transcendental style, because this is something that he has said before, that as much as he loves it, yes, Jake is wearing his transcendental style and film shirt. Beautiful shirt.
Thank you.
He's highly conscious of the fact that his films have not really included it, right? The sense that like by extending takes, by watching people beyond the sort of classical action that you would include in like a montagey film, the demonstrative action, that we gain something, and maybe we get this sense of like a spiritual feeling about these people, not exactly an experience of God. I think in his book, he makes it clear that that's a whole different type of film. But I think in this movie, there's like these little moments, a moment I loved where Latour is touching the feet of his like ex-mother-in-law, basically, and as she's in the bed.
Observance while sleeping after... Comfort of Strangers. We got another person coming into a room where people are sleeping and just looking at them.
Yeah, but then we get Marianne looking at him. Yeah. But there's all these extra moments. Again, we could have gotten a nice version of that scene where we're just seeing the touch and Marianne's face or whatever. But we get like extra moments of empty space of like her beyond, after we've already seen what she's feeling, just to sort of like wallow in this until you get a different experience of what's actually happening on screen. And then, as Jake, you mentioned, the slow-mo at the end is obviously this sort of like drawn out thing where you basically have to develop different responses to it because it goes on so long, right? The initial thing is like, oh, it's a nice cutaway on his face. Okay. All right. Now it's something else. We're like watching this hyper slow-mo. So,
not to jump ahead in your catalog, but have you guys seen The Card Counter?
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, that's a slow-mo ending shot of
the pickpocket. Wonderful.
It's true.
Just saw Bad Boys Ride or Die, which features Card Counter star Tiffany Haddish.
True. Saying
something to Will Smith that you don't usually hear said to Will Smith. It's interesting how some performers seem like, there's just words you don't say in front of that person, but she does. It's interesting. Very interesting. I feel like if we're not...
Was it his wife's name?
There is like a slapping sequence that's been discussed a bit where Martin Lawrence slaps him, but it's not quite enough
about that.
Times that it, like, I don't know, it didn't land for me. The film has some very cool action stuff in it, but I feel like the comedy was distinctly lacking. And I feel like also if we're not going to be making any new movie stars, we're going to keep putting the same people on screen as they get older and older, we have got to switch back to celluloid. These crispy digital cameras are extremely rude.
Do no favors.
Yeah. just looking at my notes here, I said this guy's high on wife. Is that anything? Yep. Thank you so much. Oh, I noted in the that interview, Schrader says that he had Dana Delaney get her hair cut like Nastasia Kinski's in Cat People, which is I don't know, really something in a movie that stars his wife about someone realizing that they're in a destructive relationship, or maybe trying to rekindle a destructive relationship from the past, and then settling on going to jail but writing romantic letters to Susan Sarandon. I don't know. Interesting thing to say. Don't really know what to make of it.
He does seem to know so much about this type of feeling. The moment where Latour records Marianne's voice from the hotel voicemail saying her own name, just so he can like steal this little memory of her, like not from his own mind, like her memory of herself that he can just have access to. Feels like from the mind of somebody who maybe has played in this area before in his life.
The smearing of the cheap cologne is also bizarre and feels like something that feels like a pre-Mishima seppuku type ritual. That seems like something you do in your. That's like something Ernst Toller would do at the end of First Reformed or something.
That's right.
That Schrader touches on that, and there's another Q&A interview he does with Ed Lockman, and somebody asks why does Willem Dafoe just keep slathering himself up with that cologne. And going back to that, this is a character that believes in luck. This is like a talisman he uses to hopefully
an anointment
come out on top. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
But
that's what Ian does with his sport life. What is your Old Spice called?
Pure Sports.
Pure Sports.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any final thoughts before we kind of bring this thing into the station? I like the scorpion paperweight. He's got a paperweight with a scorpion.
Oh,
in it.
I also thought that was funny.
You guys ever get that?
Kind of tasteless.
You guys ever get that candy from the Science Museum with a scorpion in it? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
The Science museums will very often sell a lollipop that is like candy with a little bug embedded in it, some kind of edible bug, and they sometimes have a scorpion in there.
I'm sure I've had some sort of variant of that, just like a little gummy interior guy or something.
Jake, you and me are gonna head to the California Science Center. We're gonna chow down on some scorpion pops.
I can't wait.
Ian, you just like live in.
I'm a big time you guys. That's
right?
just you don't need it. That's not a novelty. I mean, people they don't eat scorpions that often. You can buy scorpions at specialty markets to eat.
What do you do to them?
Also, they just eat different kinds of bugs. For people, just fry them up.
Eat them.
I had a farmer whose farm I worked at ate a scorpion who stung me once, and now he can control me by just saying my name.
Damn.
No, the first part is true though. He did really.
That's why I'm going by White Boy Rick now. It's because of someone ate a scorpion.
People don't.
Every single time you said it has confused me immensely, as like near to the point of me getting upset. Identity
loss.
Yeah, it's like Spirited Away over
here. Yeah. Tatiana von Furstenberg in the film sells her drugs in that scene where he like looks at the mural on the in the bar wall.
Right. Yeah. The mural is cool. The mural is very strange and cool.
Yeah.
Also, Fall from Grace, maybe a bit much, Paul. The Grace Towers, and she falls out of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I looked up. There is a Grace Tower in Manhattan, but it's a commercial building. There's no apartments in it, so I think he made it up.
Okay.
Final thoughts?
No, it's just great. It's got a really great nighttime mood that I love in a lot of movies, and if that sounds something up your alley, just check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out, and I would say just I wish I had expected nothing, because then I may have been less confused by it. But if we've got 2 points on the line so far, so by the 10th time I watch it, it will be my favorite film. That's how stuff works.
Okay. Yep.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unassuming movie with. I think much more mature exploration of relationships than we've had in almost any of his other films. So
yeah,
and it's a mood.
It is a mood.
Jake's right.
It's big mood. It's pure sport.
What are your favorite Schrader films? I don't know if you've discussed this.
Well,
do you have one?
I've mostly seen the first half. Now, I mean, obviously, I've seen every film we've discussed on the podcasts, except one. And if listeners can guess, no, I think at this point it's probably directed film. It's probably still Blue Collar, but I'm quite fond of Patty Hearst, and I hope Ian's not upset about that.
No, I told you, I was close to loving it. I still think it's a great work.
But politically,
I need to check out Patty Hearst.
Yeah, you should check it out. And Mishima's very strong, but also I find it perplexing because I'm not sure what I should feel about it. And also our conversation with Yui made me feel like I need to watch the film about 20 more times.
Hard to argue with somebody who's seen a film 11 times.
Yeah.
I will say, it feels like there. Yeah, I will, out of respect for the podcast, not address any films we haven't touched on, although one of them, when I used Letterboxd more, was amongst my favorite films. So
Dominion prequel to The
the
Exorcist
first half,
he's talking about.
That's right. That is what I'm talking about. Of the first half, yeah, I think I feel the same way as you guys. Blue Collar is incredible, an all-time film. Mishima, I think, is truly amazing. And then of his written films, I mean, I don't know, Taxi Driver.
Yeah, Taxi Driver.
I'm going to say Taxi Driver is one of the best films.
That's like the best film for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, War with Grandpa.
Huh?
That's him, right?
Well, yeah, that's
There's
true.
one with Michael Caine that's similar title. And it's like Little Boy, Old Man. But no, War with Grandpa is De Niro, I think.
That is De Niro.
Yeah. So are you still, do you think Light Sleeper's your favorite or Blue Collar your favorite? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I would put it like this. Blue Collar is his best film. Light Sleeper is my favorite film of Paul Schrader.
I get it. Light Sleeper up there for me now. I'm sold on it.
Yeah, but he's made so many good things, and I can't wait for you guys to check out more of them.
Yeah.
And me too. I mean, I haven't seen Touch. I haven't seen,
Touch is getting sort of reappreciated as that Blu-ray came out, I think.
There's that new Blu-ray out, yeah, and then a lot of things just stuff I'm still finding out existed, like the one with I can't even name it, with Dennis Hopper.
Witch Hunt, that's next week.
Witch Hunt.
Next film.
I've seen that movie, and don't worry, your ranking will not change.
I just watched Affliction for the first time 2 weeks ago. I thought that was
I'm
great.
excited about that one.
So
imagine though,
Coburn's great.
Imagine though, the door opens and one Light Sleeper blade emerges, but then from the other end, it's a double-sided Light Sleeper.
I'm gonna kill you.
We got one final thing to do, which is of course the sexual obsession check-in. Don't worry, everybody. When Paul Schrader was talking about his next project, Non Compos Mentis, as I believe it's to be called, he had this to say about the script.
I've never written a script about sexual obsession, and so that's what I'm doing now.
Now, whose voice is that? I can't place that.
That is the mellifluous voice of Susan Sarandon.
Any number of guys.
It's not Nolte.
It's close to Nolte.
I started Affliction, directed by Paul Schrader, 1997.
I'm something of a sexual obsession myself. So we're on this show trying to determine whether Paul Schrader has written that many films that are not about sexual obsession. So how does this film stack up? I would say the film is, in part, concerned with sexual obsession, but it is not primarily about sexual obsession.
Interesting.
I mean,
I would lean more
romantic obsession,
not about
sexual.
Yeah.
It's not strong. It's not high on the list.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it just goes back to the whole lust, tenderness thing. What do you think, Ian?
Yeah, I actually, aside from the effect it ultimately has on Marianne's life, I found their sexual encounter non-obsessive and fairly healthy in its
well, you missed a lot of it until you bit down on they call it a limon down there. It's sort of between a lemon and a lime.
That's right.
And then you were
well, she does have that line when they're making love.
I didn't
she
care
says,
for that particularly.
That's quite an erection.
Yeah. Oh, that part. Yeah.
You didn't care for that?
No, it's the part where she says she's dripping, and then he says, "Let's disappear."
And then she says that. Yeah.
And I was. Yeah. That's. I don't know. That's private. Yeah. I don't want to be here for that part.
I shouldn't be privy to this,
guys,
she said.
Between you guys,
yeah. But otherwise, I think the film is not. I mean, if anything, maybe romantic obsession or focused on meaning obsession or something.
Obsession.
Meaningful obsession is, I think, yeah, obsession. There you go.
And that's probably the name of what he's slathering on himself as well. Obsession is one of the big colognes, right? Isn't it like a Calvin Klein or something?
I'm sure it is.
Is that a Klein? Yep.
That's probably Armani. They probably threw in a couple of bottles of Acqua di Giorgio or whatever.
Although if they're going to call it cheap airport stuff, I don't know. Right.
It's like how car manufacturers don't want to license their cars to games where they get all crumpled up. Do you know about this?
No.
Yeah, it's why when you play a racing game that's got like a real Lamborghini in it or something, there's the collision damage doesn't really look like anything because they don't want to show the car get fucked up.
Lamborghinis are invincible.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can drive one as fast as you can and see what happens to you. Yeah. With that, thank you, Jake Tropila, for joining us on the show.
Jake.
Oh, thank you guys. It was a treat.
I wish that I had liked the movie more for you, just for your sake.
It's okay.
The sake of your beautiful Clint Eastwood box set that we discussed before the episode.
Oh yeah.
Jake's got a truly enviable large format box set. Do you have anything that you're working on? Anything you'd like people to check out? Anywhere they can find more of the Jake Tropila magic?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter. You can just find me at Jake Tropila and all things. Also, they're on Letterboxd. I'm writing film reviews semi-regularly for In Review Online. So you can check out any past work I've done there. I also do the occasional podcast at Optimism Vaccine. It's me and a bunch of buddies, and we watch a lot of trashy genre fare. But it's a good time. And
nice.
Other that, say hello. I'm on Twitter. I like to share movies a lot too.
Yeah.
So if anything's not streaming or out of print, I might know something.
He's sailing the high seas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's like one of those zombie monkey pirate robots.
Swedish
from
guys.
From the Old Spice commercial. Yeah, Ian's joke was better. Yeah.
I got to go get my eye patch from the dry cleaner. So
nice. Mine's at the Genius Bar. You know, because of Anyway, I've been Abraham White Boy Van Helsing, and remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review. It helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad. Play the show into a tape recorder and listen to it over and over again. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pod Casty For Me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you're interested in co-hosting a two-person Paul Schrader podcast, you can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Next week, we will be discussing the HBO original film Witch Hunt.
We're finally closing the loop here. You've talked about this film, and really, more importantly, the film I'm actually excited to watch before next week, which is Cast a Deadly Spell.
And I'm going to appear as if from thin air in front of Ian, and he will blast me away with a shotgun.
Shotgun me. Yeah.
That's the real loop closing. That's one for all my Ryan Johnson heads out there. Sort of a new up-and-coming filmmaker I've become familiar with. All right, that's it. Ian, do you want to say I'm dripping, and I'll say let's disappear, and then end the...
No, nope, don't
Okay,
want to do that.
That was a test, and you passed.